Hey everyone, welcome to part 2 of React Context versus Recoil. If you haven't watched the first part, please, I do highly recommend, because we go over how to create your everyday average CRUD sort of context provider for React. In this video, we're going to do the same thing but in Recoil, so hope you stick around and let's get to it. Okay, so we don't need this context anymore. We do need the state. So what I'm going to do is I created a new file here under Recoil called Atom. So I'm just going to copy the to-do over here. So I'm just going to export that over there. And I am going to take this as well because these are stuff that I will need. And then everything else can just kick the bucket. Like I don't need any of that. And we're gonna get a lot of errors, but just bear with me. We're gonna make this work. So now, to get Recoil, first of all, if you're using Yarn, do Yarn add Recoil, and then after that, just Yarn add types / Recoil over here, and you can get all the fun Recoil stuff. Okay, so now, there's this concept in Recoil. There's two basic things. If you know this, you know basic Recoil, and that's enough for you to make your state management. The first thing is atoms. Atoms represent a piece of state, and the whole point of Recoil is to have very small pieces of state so that not everything subscribed to this small piece of state will update. See, the problem with React context is that you have your context with everything. You have it with your updater functions, you have it with your to-dos, you have it with your counts, you have it with all of that. So if any one of them change, then the functions, the components that subscribe to only updating will also re-render as well, and that's a problem. Why are they updating? It shouldn't be updating if they're not really, if nothing they're pulling in does anything. So that's one thing Recoil is really good at. By default, it's very performant, just the way it's architected, like small atoms, selectors, and all that stuff. So let's get our atom in. So atom is from Recoil, and then over at the bottom, we will create our to-do state, and that is equal to our atom. So the one thing with atoms and selectors are they need a unique key. So I'm just gonna name this as to-dos. That's pretty unique. And then it also takes in a default value. So now if we hover over this, which is the great part of Recoil, we see what the different types of values it could be. It could be just an array, or it could be a Recoil value, or it could be a promise. The one that I'm interested in is it actually being a promise because I need to fetch the data. So what I'm going to do is just say const fetch to-dos, and that is equal to a function that actually returns a promise. And the reason why I'm doing that is because our default value is taking in a promise. So it takes in a promise, and it's going to be a promise of array of to-dos, right? So that's just going to be it. I double converted that thing. And yeah, we need one more arrow over here. Okay, so now let's return fetch over here. So return our fetch, and the fetch is just going to take a URL, and again it's going to take a body with a method called get. We're trying to get our stuff, and that's pretty much it, minus the headers. We don't really need it over here, but I'm going to add it anyways just for consistency. Okay, cool. So now trying to see, I got something wrong with the promise syntax. I'll just say promise any, and it is fine over here. So let me just take that and say actually it's an array of that, and that's fine. I will just say dot then, and I'll just say result is res.json, and that should be it. Cool. So we have our fetch function. So all we need to do is pass it here and execute it. So we do the parentheses to execute it. So now this has our to-do state. I'm trying to think if we can actually make this show up, which we probably can. So let's just export our to-do state over here. And let's go to our to-do list. So our to-do list over here is going to pull in our to-dos from our context. But now we don't have context anymore. We're using Recoil. So instead, this is what you have to do, right? You only want the state. So Recoil has 3 functions that you can use. Again, this is really all you need to know. So use Recoil, use Recoil value, use Recoil Recoil state, and then use Recoil, where is it? Recoil, use set Recoil state. These are the 3 things that you need to know from Recoil, and I'll show you what exactly each of them return. So this is going to take a Recoil value, and that value is what we created over here. So if we go to Atom, this to-do state is our Recoil value. So we're just going to say to-do state over here. We're going to pass in our to-do state over here and pass in our to-do state over here. So let's see what this returns. This returns only our to-dos. This only returns our data. Recoil state, this returns our data and also the setter or updater function. So it sends in both. And then finally, the last one, use set Recoil. So as you can guess, only sends the setters or updater functions. So you see how Recoil is just performant by default, because now instead of you pulling in all your data from your context provider, you can pull in either the data that you need or the setters that you need, which makes it by default performant, because now when you're pulling in your setters, you're not also pulling in your data, so that when your data changes but you're just a setter component, you don't have to change, right? Because you don't really have to do anything with it. So again, the one that we need over here is our value. So I'll just remove these 2 over here, and I'll say const to-dos is equal to this, and that should fix itself. There's one gotcha that I want to go through, but I also need to just comment this out, and also I don't need this anymore, and I don't need this anymore. Okay, cool. So now let me do a yarn dev, see if we don't have any syntax problems. We don't. Okay, so now let's go back to our to-do over here. Refresh this. Let's see what's going on. Which file is this? In our main. Okay, yeah. So another thing I forgot is with Recoil, Recoil only has one sort of provider, the equivalent to a provider. With the React context, you would have a provider for your session management. You would have a provider for your to-dos. You would have a provider for different sort of data that your app would be dealing with, right? Just to make it more efficient. You don't want to have all your state in one place, especially if they don't really have anything to do with each other. So instead, let's import from Recoil, and it's going to be our Recoil root over here. So now we just take that and wrap that over here. Now if we save that, we seem like we don't have any errors. If we go back over here and refresh what is going on, so our component to do over here. Oh yeah, we don't have this anymore, so we should probably just clean this up. But also at the same time, I'm not using these, so I don't know why it wants to complain. Let's see. Refresh this page. go to our console. Okay, so this is the state that I want to be at. We have it working now without our context, which is beautiful, but here's the problem. We refresh this, and if you see, it says add suspense fallback. Now, if you're an everyday Reactor, you know exactly how to fix this issue. It's just a suspense fallback. This is something that's available just out of the box with React. So the reason why this is happening is because Atom over here, the default value is a promise. So what happens when the Atom is a promise is that that component doesn't render. It actually falls back to a loading component. It says, hey, I'm not ready. This promise hasn't resolved, so I just want to wait. So to fix that, let's go to our to-dos. This is where it is falling back. So all we need to do is wrap this in a suspense. So let's suspense over here, and then drop this at the bottom, and our fallback is just going to be something simple. It's just going to be some string, and say ... loading, and we save that, and let's go back over here and refresh, and there we go. Our app is up and running. We have our to-do showing up, and this is pretty much Recoil. Like, we have Recoil state set up. If we go to our network tab, clear this and refresh, we see that we're hitting our to-do over here. If you even want to see the fallback message, we would have to change this to fast 3G and then just give it a couple of seconds, and we see loading over there. Okay, cool. So now we still need to port over our updating, deleting, and our count. So I think the easiest thing right now is to do our count. So what we're going to do is go to our Atom, and now we've done Atom. Now the next main thing in Recoil is selectors. Now selectors is state that is derived from another state. So for example, I want to get the count of to-dos, so I'm going to derive that value from our Atom, from our to-do state. So let's do that right now. So const to-do count, I'll just say to-do count state is equal to our selector, right? And that auto imports at the top, really nice feature. Okay, so now again, everything needs a unique key, and this is going to be our to-do count. And it's going to, instead of a default now, so now setters is derived state, so it doesn't really have a concept of default. Instead, it has a concept of get. So get over here, we'll destructure a get, and what we're going to do is now we want to derive it from our to-do state. So what we're going to do is get our to-do state. So get to-do state, right? This gets our to-do state. So now we just have to say dot length, and that gets our length. So now all we have to do is say const to-do count is equal to that, and now finally we just return our to-do count over here. So now you could be really good TypeScript people and always to just add types as well. So you can say array I to-do, and then over here at the bottom it's just going to be a number, right? We're just returning a number. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to export this as well. So now we got our to-do count state. So now let's go to our to-do count over here, and we're not using context now. Get away from context, and let's bring that in. So we say const, we want to use recoil value, and we want to use the to-do count state, and this is just going to be our const to-do count. Boom, that is it. That is how you get the count. And let's see how it looks. So now if we go over here, we do need to uncomment our to-do count over here and save that, and then go back here and refresh. Let's change this back to no throttling. We have an error. Let's see what's going on. Adam blah 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 does not provide exported name to do count state. It's because we forgot to save this. And now we can refresh again. And there we go. So now our count of to-dos is 4. So now let's toggle this. Oh, we don't have update to-do. So now we have all of this. Now let's focus on adding to-dos. And yeah, let's do that right now. So now if we go to our add to-do over here, again, we're not using context. We are not using this, right? So now what we're going to do, we need to set our contact, we need to set our to-dos. So now we don't have to use recoil value. We don't need that, right? When we don't care about the value, we care about setting the to-dos. So instead we have to use set recoil state. And then this is going to be our to-do state. And now this is going to return us our setter or updater function. So I'm just going to say here const add to-do, right? So this is going to add it. So now what we're going to do is just modify this function. So this is we're going to get our previous to-dos over here. And we are going to just make this an array, spread the previous values, and the new value over here. Okay, so that handles perv. This is previous value. So that handles that, but that doesn't really make our API call. So we still do need to handle that specific case. So now I could put the API call over here, but I want to keep it close to my state. I want this to be as presentational as possible. I want to keep all my logic here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy that and just create a new function called add to-dos, right? Add to do. And I'm going to export this as well. So what's going to happen is this is going to return a promise. It's going to return a promise. And let TypeScript just infer the types for now. So I'm going to create it. So it's going to be a post, and it's going to take in a to-do, to-do, and we're going to pass in that to-do over here. So body is json.stringify, and we're going to pass in our body over here. So now that returns a promise of any, but it's not a promise of any actually, it's actually a promise of an I to do. So that makes that type safe. So now we can go back over here, bring in our add to do, and all we have to do now, this is going to be conflicting with the name, so I need to change this to update to, or should probably, the better word is set to do, to stay idiomatic with React. And then now all we have to do is add to do, and it's going to take in our new to do value. Now our new to do value is going to be this. So I'll pass that in, and then I'll say dot then, and this is going to be our to do, and it's just going to be a function that sets it. So I'm just going to delete this, and I'm going to say set to do, and that's just going to be our previous value, and we're going to spread our previous value and then add our new value to the very end. And voila, that is it for adding to-dos. Like this is it. This is beautiful. I hate thinking about context, and I can't believe I said I hate context. So I've been using context all my career, but Recoil is really a blessing. It's so simple. So now we have adding to-dos. Let's check out the functionality. So if we go back to this and we refresh this, we actually do need to uncomment the add to do over here. So let's save that. So now let's add it. So new to do by Recoil. And then we add this, and we see we added a new to do over here. We can part 2, and then add a new to-do over here, and it updates all of that. Pretty cool, pretty simple. Okay, so now the last thing we have to do, so we go to our to-do list. We aren't using this anymore, so we can delete this. We can clean this up as well. And yeah, so now let's go to our to-dos over here, and it's missing 2 functions, updating our to-do and deleting our to-do. So we need to create those functions. So first of all, let me import the proper to-do over here. And now let's go to our atom, right? So now we want to update our to-dos and we want to delete our to-dos. So it's going to be update and this is going to be delete. So what's going to happen here is, again, update doesn't really take a body and so doesn't delete. So our update is a put method and our delete is a delete method, and we need that string interpolation over here. So that's going to be URL / blah todo.id. And now we can just copy this URL and paste that in over here. So that's going to update our to-do and that's going to delete our to-do. We know our delete request doesn't really return a body, so it will break over here. So I'll just need to remove this. I don't need it. And then don't understand why this is breaking. Promise response is signed. Promise to do. Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, because that's returning a response. Okay, that's fine. So a response over here, right? We don't really care. And our update to do is actually returning a to do over here. So that's pretty much it, right? Let's go back over to our to do over here and just finish this off, right? So what we need to do is I'm just going to create helper functions because I think there's some logic that I need to do. Then I don't want to make this UI cluttered. So I'll say const update, or I'll say handle toggle to do, handle to do toggle. I think that's a better word. And it's going to take a to do and it's going to be of type I to do. And inside here, what we're going to do is call our update to do from our React. We're going to pass in our to do over here, and then we will chain that with a .then. And then what this will pass us is our updated to do, right? So now we need to update this to do in our state. So we need our updater functions. So use set recoil state. And we're going to pull in our to-do state over here. And this is just going to be our const sets to-do over here. So now we can call this function. And it's going to be our previous to-dos. And essentially, we're just swapping that specific to-do out with the ID from the to-do that's responded by our server. So we're going to say previous dot map, and it's going to be our previous to do. And is the previous if the old to do's does not equal to the updated to do, right? Updated to do, updated to do dot id. Then we just want to return that to do. We just don't want to touch it. If the ID is max, and we want to swap it out, so we want to pass in the updated to do over here. So if we save that, that actually handles this case. So I just got to copy this and paste it over here. And now finally, I'm just going to create a delete to do. So handle delete to do delete. Pass that in there, and so now this is going to delete to do, and we're going to pass in our to do over here. It's not going to return us anything meaningful, so it's just going to be an empty arrow function. And then what we're going to do is we're going to filter out that specific to do. So instead of map, it's going to be filter. And essentially, we want to return the previous, we want to return the to-dos to the filter if it does not equal to the to-do that's being updated. Again, this is JavaScript. Please watch higher order functions. I have a whole video on JavaScript called 0 to Hero, which goes over the very important arrow functions and all that stuff. But in any case, this handles it. So if we save this and restart, now we can finally delete. We should be able to delete. So clicking that, we delete it, delete it, delete it. And if you notice, what's great is we're deleting this, and this this input field does not have a box around it because it has nothing to do with the to-dos, unlike our previous context version where it was updating, because all the state and the setters was just like up there in this context provider, and every single component subscribed to this context provider was changing. So even if we toggle over here, we notice that this is not being updated. And most importantly, the outside app is also not being updated. And let's now do a little comparison. So let's go over here. Oh no, that's not it. Over here. And let's do some comparison. Okay, Adam over here, we created our state in about 55 lines of code. If we now go to our context over here, which I pull up, this is our context version. It's about 100 lines of code to do the exact same freaking thing, the exact same thing. And I think that's really beautiful. If you can write fewer lines of code to achieve the same results, more often than not, go for the fewer lines of code. It's much less lines of code to maintain in the long run, makes everyone's life a lot easier. So over here, again, we have 100 lines of code, and over here we have about 55 lines of code. And this is it. Like this is required context that you need to write, and this is the required let's remove that one line at the top. Now it's 54. This is all the required recoil that needs to be written down. So I hope everyone enjoyed this video. I do want to hear what you guys think. Are you guys coming from a React context background? Are you guys coming from a Recoil background? Or should I dare say a Redux background, which I haven't touched in like forever because it's sort of outdated. And it was a good state management a long time ago. Redux, in my opinion, requires even more boilerplate. I've used it before, Redux Tunk, and you need actions and payloads and all that stuff. It's just unnecessary, especially for a relatively small state. If you can keep your state as small as this, it's beautiful. You're a beautiful developer. Make it very easy on everyone. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about this video. Do you find this useful? Are you going to use Recoil more often? Are you going to stick to context? Really want to know your opinion. This was my little breakdown of the differences and how you can port your context over to a Recoil state if you decide on moving into that side. But in any case, show your support, drop a like, really goes a long way, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.